Hello, good afternoon, good day, everyone. Welcome back to the My STEM Careers Limited series brought to you by GirlLEAD. Hope you've had a lovely week so far. Welcome to the show here again, where we geek about careers in tech. We break them down to understandable chunks so you properly understand exactly what they mean, how you can get into these fields, and explore using this knowledge to drive growth and changes in your community and, of course, globally. However, today we're going to be taking a different route. We're going to be talking about what it means to build a business in tech and building by bootstrapping. Now, that conversation today is going to happen with a lovely guest, Joseph Julius Onwo. Now, Joseph is a senior front-end engineer and also a founder of InSpace and Wixel. Now, however, he's also, like I mentioned, a senior front-end engineer who has sort of like almost 10 years experience. He currently works with at Moneypoint Group, and he also has experience across fintech, blockchain, and working global organizations like the UNICC, Polytype Labs, and Nextcoin. Now, Joseph is skilled in JavaScript, TypeScript, React, Tailwind, CSS testing, and many other things. Well, ladies and gentlemen, meet Joseph. Hi, Joseph. Good afternoon.
Hi, Faith. Nice to be here.
Nice. See, how are you doing? How was your week?
My week was a lot, up, down, left, right. But yeah, we thank God for the week. It's been good so far.
That's good. That's good to hear. So, where do we start from? I'm looking forward to this conversation. I remember, I think good context was I was talking to somebody and the person was telling me, oh, I met this person who did this, who does this. And by the way, this happened. I was like, what? We're doing this project and it'd be great to have this person. So I'm really, really looking forward to this conversation. Um, I think let's start nicer. Let's start off with your businesses. So I started with the fact that you're a founder of two businesses. Can you just give us some context on what exactly they do? What was the problem you're trying to solve when you built these businesses?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, so to answer that, two businesses. The first one is Wixel and the second one is InSpace, right? So Wixel is the older one. So Wixel is a web design agency, right? It was started sometime in 2017, 2018. Definitely 2017. And well, the problem then was not quite a lot of like software, web software had
Yeah.
like the best experience, right? So we're talking about the government websites as well, Jamden, and a
Yeah.
bunch of other platforms as well. And these things were not so, say, far-fetched. They were actually quite simple things that could be done to just
Mhm.
improve like the overall experience in a sense. So that's basically how we started with like Wixel. So we started Wixel. I started Wixel with three of my friends. So we just basically built a bunch of solutions and tried a bunch of stuff in our early days. We'll talk more about that later. So for InSpace specifically, the newer one was started like 2 years ago,
Yeah.
2024 September.
Yeah.
And it isn't, I'll just basically talk about what it is. So it is a maker space. Yes.
Okay.
So make the term maker space is not something that I would say Nigerians are used to. So the first time that I ever came across that term was from my friend Paul Pham. He is also a software engineer, but he's based in the US, or he's a
Okay.
citizen of the US. So maker space is simply where you create stuff, right? And it's not just software, there's hardware involved. So
Mm,
it could be for 3D printing, robotics, any interesting, say, techie product or idea that you have, you
yeah.
basically bring it to life. It could also be woodwork, furnitures, and all that stuff, but it's basically where you create stuff with your bare hands. There's also programming in the mix. So InSpace was started 2024. Basically, bring the things that feel so far-fetched, right?
Yeah.
The things that we typically see in movies or watch on YouTube about how other scientists and other like co-working spaces outside Nigeria are sort of like, innovating and experimenting. So that's basically what it is. So we're simply trying to get there. Right now, we're basically sort of like we've solved like the two essential problems, right? Because it's like quite a lot of things that you have to do. So we solved like the issue of electricity and internet,
Yeah.
right? We thanks to Starlink, which basically took a lot of the burden. But yeah, for the next set of phases, we are looking at getting more like hands-on heavy machineries to sort of like help people create and innovate outside like software, which is sort of like what most people think tech is about nowadays.
Okay, that's really helpful. I like the makerspace idea. I think there's a lot that can happen for people when you come together around equally innovative minds. There's sort of just
Hmm.
something, just things just bubble up for you, and you start tapping into ideas and inspirations and also the experiences of these people. So that's quite interesting. Now, for weeks, you started, this is almost 10 years ago now, right?
Yeah, it is
Yeah. And I mean, it's
almost.
almost, literally almost. And looking back 10 years ago, demand on tech products, websites, for lack of better terms, was very different from what we have now. So, how have you as a business transitioned and sort of stayed with the ebb and flow of the changes that have come up in that industry?
Oh yeah. So I would say outside of by saying tech evolves so fast, it's like in the last, say, 2 years, there've been a bunch of tools that have been deprecated. So by deprecated, it's like most people don't use them anymore. It could be for
Yeah.
security reasons. It could be that there's something spicier or hotter that's been released. So I would say for the most part, it requires you to sort of like stay on the like you have to like stay on the tip of things. It's like researching always and looking
Yeah.
for like ways to like boost your productivity, right?
Hmm.
So it's like, oh, I would say that's the key focus for me. So it's like I don't want to be doing work and wasting time, right? When there is like a simpler solution, which
Yeah.
basically makes this AI age all the more interesting because it's like things that typically take us like longer hours or more hours to make days can now be done in hours in a sense
Yeah.
simply because you have like the underlying experience, right? So another thing that most I'm diverging. So another thing that most people don't know about AI is it's only as good as you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So it doesn't simply eliminate the need to like do this research yourself and just basically mess around. Yeah, so you still have to mess around. You still have to stay up to date. Else it will just suggest something that is outdated.
Way out of your context. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's helpful. Now, this is probably a pokey question. But I'm sitting here. So I think I don't know what I was looking at, and somebody was saying how they used AI to build a website in 7 minutes. So are you guys still, do you still see a market for what it is that you offer or has what you offer? Because I'm just curious anyways. Because I mean we have a website, people are building, it's not like we're using AI. But on that large scale demand, do you still see it as much as you did back then when you started?
Yeah, so the truth is nothing has really changed, right? In terms of the only thing that has actually changed is the speed, right? Not demand in a sense. So it's like saying that, oh, people don't actually just need a website, right? If someone says I need a website, the follow-up question would be, why do you need a website? That's for me personally. It's like, why do you think you need a website? Be like, I don't want to put my business out there. Be like, yeah, there's also Instagram. You can put your business out there on Instagram, right? You
Yeah.
can put your business out there on social media. So like so it's like the demand hasn't really changed. I think it has actually declined over time, right?
Mhm.
So nowadays it's mainly people that need a business, like that have a business need that typically needs a website, right? So it's like saying if
Yeah.
you're a professional and you need to sort of like prove your credibility, you go to LinkedIn and you create, a profile and then you provide all the work experience and all. And
Yeah.
then if someone's like, if your recruiter was to ask, oh, what do? You send your LinkedIn profile. So that makes like that defeats the purpose of like the need, right, to sort of like
Yeah.
create your own website unless you want to just simply do that. Um, I personally don't have a website, right? Not that I can't create one, but it's like, well, there's no need really. If someone wants to hire me, they'll go to my LinkedIn and they'll say, oh, this guy has lots of experience, and then they'll, leave a message or sort of. No, I'm not worried about being able to build a website in minutes. It's like if you build a website in minutes, right, it has to solve a problem for
Yeah.
whoever you're building it for. So it's not just the speed, it's like the purpose of having the website.
Okay.
But
So
no, no.
sorry, go on.
to answer your questions in simpler terms, right? Because there is no increase in demand, right? There's not
Yeah.
much profit or money to be made from just building websites for people.
Yeah, so that is you've shifted from just building websites for people to answering the corporate question of how do I create value? Like how do I communicate my value in this age and time? So that probably
Yeah.
would be just beyond the website. You probably have what I'm trying to get at is how has your product offering evolved? Like the specifics of it.
Oh yeah, so for the specifics, right, we go beyond just building a website, right? So it's more like what offers value is not just some information somewhere, right? It
Yeah.
has to, again, it needs to have a purpose, right? So what's the purpose for? Is it to simply automate some process so you don't have to like leave? So one typical case would be social media. If you're selling a product and you're having to like respond to like 10 customers at the same time, and half of them are really just, they're not interested. They're just there for inquiries. They're making inquiries. So you just basically waste all those time attending to people and wasting your time. So the typical case would be if you create a website, in that case, you could just simply create a form, which you could also do from Google Forms. Really. So it's like there are so many alternatives to like the simple or the basic needs for having a website. So what we focus on is we focus on product development. So it's like saying, which is one thing that AI is not exactly great at, like for non-technical people specifically. So
Okay.
it's like saying, oh, if you come up with an idea and you just basically want to bring it to life, right? We're not talking just website. We're talking end to end, all the processes, all the functionalities well thought out, planned out, right? So
Yeah.
that's basically what we focus on at Wixel Design Agency, right? So we handle everything from the UX design to the programming and deployment.
Okay. That's really helpful. I think provides some clarity on why I was asking these questions is as a business owner, you sort of have to move with the demands of the time. So when you
Mm-hmm,
started out, for example, 9, 10 years ago, the
mm-hmm,
it was people just wanted websites. And so you gave them that. But now we're in the age of advanced technology, AI, where things are faster. And that also that pushes us to sort of recalibrate to say, what exactly do I need? And so expanding that question has also then asked you guys to also expand your offering, which is something that I think a lot of people who build businesses have to consider. You have to move with the times. You can't just stay where you were 10 years ago. You constantly have to evolve. Now, how did you get into so you built this business bootstrapping, which is essentially by through personal funds. I think that's this oversimplified way of explaining what that is. What made you decide? How did you get into it? So before we even get how did you get into it? 9 years ago, how did you start?
well, yeah, so I was in the uni then, first year, I just got in. So I built a blog for a friend, right? It was called, I think, 27 Blogging. And that blog basically sort of like showed me the possibilities of, say, application development. So there was like this book I was reading called PHP MySQL for Dummies, and I would just basically mess around and build stuff. So after reading through the book, I was like, okay, I'm going to challenge myself with something, right? So let me build this blog from scratch. And that was crazy, really crazy. Uh I built it. Experienced all the issues with deployment and setup, and since then, I was like, wait, I could actually bring any idea to life. So I decided to build a school management system, right?
Mm.
Built it, sent it to schools, and they were like, they don't exactly need it. And then I eventually convinced one school, and they were like, oh, sure, come and set it up. And then I realized that outside building, right, we also have an infrastructure problem in this country. So none of the schools really could handle the application, meaning that they didn't even have a proper working computer for starters. So I was like, oh my goodness, there's a deeper problem here. So we have to solve the underlying problem before we even get to this phase. So since then, I was like, okay, at this point, since I can't come up with all the ideas, I'm sure there are people around me that have ideas. So let's basically see how we can help them, bring it to life. So since then, I built a bunch of things over the years. from e-commerce websites from scratch to full event ticketing platforms and logistic products as well. Yeah, that's basically how I started.
Okay, so you took that out of my mouth. There's curiosity. It's funny how things, because I think sometimes people think that so two things. One is curiosity, and one is being confident with the fact that you have half the knowledge or half the information required. I'm like, okay, I could actually do that. That just People sometimes think you have to have it all together, the package from A to Z before you start, and it's like, no, you have to be comfortable with operating with half the knowledge. Because I'm very sure that when you started, you probably didn't have all the knowledge that you have today. It's a difference exactly. And but that curiosity, like, okay, I can actually, why not? So speaking of which, you know what? Let's keep on going forward. We'll probably go backward at some point. So you're a CEO. If we elevate the language, you're a CEO. What does your day to day look like? Now that you two businesses, um, really successful, what does your day to day look like?
Yeah, so day to day. So basically, Wixel has 6 staff. InSpace has a lot more, about 13 or so. And just to give you like some context, it's not so crazy, but it's quite a handful really. So there has to be like there's an hierarchy in a sense, just to sort of like help mitigate or like reduce the bombardments that I typically experience on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with the idea. I thought I could manage everyone, but it turns out that at the end of the day, hierarchies exist for a good reason.
For a good reason.
Uh yeah, so as you grow from 1, 2, 3 all the way to 10, you realize that there has to be people in the interim. But yeah, it's mainly is for weeks though, is having meetings, being present in those meetings, getting devising, just basically planning, right? And
Yeah.
sharing updates on the projects that we have running. That happens twice a week. Yeah. So there's not really much outside the personal work that I have to do on my responsibilities in engineering. For InSpace, yeah, that demands quite a lot because it's a physical space, right?
Mhm.
And we have like I think last year we got over 8,000 and some of them are actually customers. Yeah, so it's like I haven't checked the records, but yeah, that's quite a lot. On a daily basis, we have at least 12 people trooping in and out of the space. So the staff is more hands-on for any like technical issues like the ACs or whatnot, not functioning as expected. So I do tend to check on them once in a while.
Sounds interesting. So this feels like the way you come at the two businesses are quite different. As the CEO, what's your top priority for any of the business or both of the business for one of the business? Because so for sometimes, for example, some people when they look at themselves as individuals and they think of their top priorities across their full-time job and their maybe side hustle, whatever, they sort of
Mhm.
align. So there's that sense of we're heading in one direction. Now, for you, it could be different because again, you come at your two businesses differently. But as a CEO, what's your top priority?
My top priority is to ensure that everyone working for me is okay. Right. That's basically it. I love my customers. I would definitely prioritize them at any point in time. But it's like saying that it's sort of like hard to, how do I put it? If the people that are working for you are unhappy, things are bound to go wrong, right? They are
Mm,
not even going to treat your customers right in the first
yeah.
place because they're not being treated right. So it's like, why would you? So it's mainly ensuring that the business grows, right? To the point
Mm,
where it's like, because InSpace is not profitable yet, right? We do have
okay.
customers, we do have lots, but we've not broken even
Yeah.
yet, right? So it's like most of the money that comes in, all the revenue goes back
But
into like salaries and all that. So it's like saying the top priority for me in InSpace is simply looking to how we can generate just enough revenue to reach sustainability. So it's like saying that we're making enough profit to sustain the place, pay the rents, pay salaries. We're not there yet. We're pretty close. So it's
mhm,
mainly from a top level. What ideas can we incorporate? Which other services can we introduce
yeah.
that could encourage our customers to, pay more? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So that's people, that's profits. Is there a culture somewhere around there? Like as you think of the people, because one of the things that people find out is one of key element that sort of retains people and keep employees happy. It's company culture. So is that something you also think about, or somebody else on your team is also thinking about as well?
Yeah, so we have like a simple culture, really. It's like just simply saying that everyone has a voice, which is something that you don't like in my experience working at different companies, that doesn't happen, especially Nigerian companies, right? It's like most of our CEOs feel like they are the smartest people on earth, that you don't have a say, that the idea is final, and the very few of them give closure. It's like saying, this is how it needs to be done. Yes, we're not against that, but could you just paint some picture, give us some insights as to why this is the way to go? And then they'll be like, just shut up and do what I say. Yeah. So yeah, so it's simple. It's like you have to enjoy what you're doing, right? Even if it's not, because one thing I've realized is everyone has dreams, clearly, right?
Yeah.
And most people that work for me, I always prefer that they have like ambitions.
Yeah.
If it doesn't have to be too crazy, but it's like have something that you're looking and you're working towards, so I could know how to support you and all that. So currently, my business manager is learning how to do web development. He's like completely new, right? But
Yeah.
it's like a question of, as you're managing this business, does it give you enough room to grow? Right? So it's like
Right.
saying, yeah, clearly, because there's stable internet, you don't have to worry about electricity, and then you could just simply allocate 1 or 2 hours to just simply improve yourself, right? On top of that, it's like, on top of that, it's like, why? It's like, if I ever come up with a decision, right, by
Mm-hmm.
myself, I
Mm-hmm.
always tend to explain exactly how I arrived at it,
Why?
right?
Yeah.
And then after that, I'll just basically ask them, do you have, you think that this is the way we should go? Do you think you have, there's something like, share your perspective so we know that when we execute this or during
Yeah.
execution, we're all aligned.
Mm-hmm.
So that has definitely helped a lot. It's like people are taking ownership and they're basically sharing their ideas freely. And sometimes especially for new staff, right? Given how
Mm-hmm.
toxic their previous working place may have been, or their previous employer may have been, I just basically tell them that, see, if I state something, it's not final. Tell
Yeah.
me exactly how you think this thing can go wrong. Tell me
Yeah.
from any perspective whatsoever, and we'll just basically deliberate on it and arrive on what the conclusion.
Good.
So after doing that with 1 or 2 of them, I noticed that they actually tend to like speak up when they feel things are not exactly when things are heading downhill in a sense. So we changed the price. We changed our pricing recently, and
Okay.
they're like, it's expensive. We're going to lose some customers. And I'm like, well, the truth is, we're not making enough money to pay you guys in the first place, right? So we
Yeah.
have to take this risk, right? And because obviously we need money to grow the
Yeah.
business, it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense that we continue, pricing, we keep our price the way it is, our pricing the way it is, right? So we definitely have to grow. And then we're like, oh, I think I have an idea. And then one of them shared this idea. And yeah, that's basically what we're doing. So it's like inclusivity is, I would say, the main motivator for me as to why they take ownership and
Hmm.
want to see the business thrive.
I started this thing as bootstrapping, but as you know, as you're talking, I've been scribbling because my brain is going in sorry. It's going in different directions, right? Because I think one of the things that we don't think enough early on when we are building small businesses, so micro and small businesses, is what do I
Mhm.
want to achieve and what's the culture to sustain that, to build the people that I need to sustain this business. We don't talk about that. I think because we're so much in fight or flight mode, there is no time to actually sit down and think about these things. So I'm confused. Where did you first of all see that? Definitely going to come bootstrapping elements because, like you mentioned initially about profits and stuff. Where did you get inspiration to try this sort of inclusive leadership, this sort of getting feedback? Because we don't, our Nigerian society, you and I Nigerians, we don't exactly have that environment where people are saying, "Oh, what do you think about this? I want to hear your thoughts. I want you to challenge me as the boss." Where did you get that inspiration?
Well, for the most part, even before I began, like, started a company, I listened to John Maxwell's podcast. It's a
Okay.
leadership podcast, right? So, and with every episode, there's just something, there's a bomb that's dropped in every episode. And the bomb is the it basically contradicts what we know as Nigerians, right? It's like
Yeah.
saying, we expect the leader to be the person in
Yeah.
charge and all that. And then he would, so John Maxwell was a pastor. I think he's still a pastor, really, from my perspective. And John C. Maxwell, I think he also wrote a Bible on
I like
leadership as
Johnson.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But
So
only
John
that.
C.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So he's a pastor, and what he said is, there's one thing that always stuck with me. It's like if you want to be a leader, your job, your duty is
Mm-hmm.
to serve.
Yeah.
Every leader is a servant, not the
Yeah.
opposite. You're not the king, you're the servant, right? So if you employ someone and they are basically not doing what you ask them to do, it's because they don't see you serving, right? It's
True.
possibly, oh, go and get this stuff done. And then they see that you're just basically doing something else. It's like you don't care about the business and you're just basically letting them figure that out. And that would definitely reduce morale in a sense. It's like, if you don't care about it, why should I?
Yes, should I
Really?
care? Right.
You pay me for it, which means I'm just going to do what I have to do, right? And
Yeah.
not exactly. So it's like a case of
Well,
motivation and morale. Yeah, so that's basically where I got those values from. Just listening to the podcast and learning from more
that's
experienced leaders.
That's really, really helpful. I think that is a leadership angle worth exploring. So, for example, in my full-time job, what we do essentially is responsible leadership. And there is this constant thing around how do you lead people in a sense? How do you create an environment where people can go out and thrive and overdo what you need them to do? There's that sense of if you are not modeling what it is that you want to see. Because I was doing having a conversation around building healthy, thriving multi-generational workforces. And one of the theories is
Mm-hmm.
you cannot model something different from what you want to see. So as a leader, there's a conversation you have to have with yourself with what do I want to see in this space and how do I need to model what it is that I want to see? And you have to model it every day, every situation, every interaction. You can't be standing there and be saying, oh, for example, I want us to be very transparent with how money comes in and goes
And
out
you're
of this.
not transparent.
You're not transparent. It's not going to work. It's like people are like, they'll raise nose for you at your bank. They'll be like, what do you mean? You are saying one thing, but you are doing another thing. And that is because people sometimes see this as wishy-washy, where, oh, it's nice to have, but you don't get it. These things are standing in the way of your profit levels. Because when people are supposed to be focused on doing what they're supposed to do to bring in money, like sharing ideas, like your team member, they are busy there trying to circumvent you, trying to play the business, trying to do the barest minimum as best as possible.
As
Because
best as possible.
that's what they are seeing. So when everybody's supposed to go out there and be chasing the money, they can't because, well, they are more focused on lesser things. But I do want to touch on situations whereby you have modeled this right type of behaviors and people still come in and they just give you crap. Because I know things like that happen. I know situations like that. You set the right environment, you set the right standards, you have the right culture, the right teammates, everybody's locked, stepped it on the vision. And someone comes in and they're like, Lord Jesus,
Yeah.
how do you
So this is my second manager, not my first manager.
okay.
So my first manager, everything I ask him to do, he always responds as though it's a drag, right? It's like,
Okay.
don't disturb me. This is, I don't have this. So it's like when you, how do I put it? So there's this stuff I've been hearing, I guess in my circle, right? People I follow on WhatsApp and all. So most of them have been talking about friends and family and how you shouldn't trust them, this and that. In simpler terms, it's easy to know when someone is basically tired because the truth is people tend to get tired over time.
Yeah.
So they might be interested in your stuff, genuinely interested in building with you early on, right?
Yeah.
But then over time, their priorities might switch for any reason whatsoever. It could be because they're not earning more. It could be because there are better opportunities there and they feel like they're wasting their time with you, right? So when you get to that point, right, and you basically bring it up twice and nothing changes, then it's basically a sign that you just have to shift, start searching for someone else that might be interested or buy into this vision as well. Because the truth is, once someone's mind change about something, there's really nothing you can do about it.
But so this is a very subjective opinion, I guess. But a lot
Yeah.
of people are quite hesitant because of the talent in the market. I have read, so I sit at the top of GirlLEAD, and I speak to people sometimes who we send interns their way, or sometimes friends as well, friends who are hiring in their own organizations, either as leaders or as senior management, and also on social media. A lot of people, there's this sense that there's a dearth of the skills required and also the mindset required that people are looking for in their company. And that's probably one of the things that holds people back, because sometimes these people who come with, let's say, this negative attitude, they have the right skill sets. They can bring in the
Mm-hmm.
money. They can probably, somebody will hear me and say, how can somebody have bad behavior, have the right skill set? Those two things are very different things. Somebody can have an amazing ability to bring in 150 million pounds annually or every quarter, and they are just the
Mm-hmm.
person that talks down on everyone. So it's
Mm-hmm.
possible to have those two qualities in the same person. But some people, because you bring in 150 million naira, pounds, whatever, they are less interested in letting you, because they're like, who else is going to bring in the money? So if we bring that down a little bit, do you see that? I think we talked about this earlier on, around skills and having people with the right skills come to company. Do you see that where you are looking for skill sets and mindset and personality, and you find it hard to find somebody, people who have all of them?
Yeah, so I work with a lot of people. I think the most recent one is, yes, he's good, he delivers stuff fast, but he doesn't know how to speak to people, right? He's rude. Again, the issues could be from any, it could be from parenting, it could be from, I don't know, social circles, from peers. I don't know where the issue is. That's not my problem. I'm just going to tell you that, see, this stuff you're doing is not so nice at all, and you
Yeah.
could just basically look for a way to solve it. And if you do not listen, then there's really nothing that I can do. Because again, it's like saying, from an engineering standpoint, I know that I can get things done, but
Yeah.
because I have more important things to worry about, I'm letting you
Yeah.
do them, right?
Yeah.
So in the case of, so from an engineering standpoint, I'm okay letting someone that is good go because I know that I am good. Yeah. Or I know that, okay, in order for me to get someone that would match this, I would eventually pay a lot more, right?
Yeah.
So I can sort of like manage that. Now, for the cases where for cases that's not really my strong suits, like marketing and all, well, to be honest, it depends on how badly it affects like the organization, like everyone, right? If
Yeah.
everyone knows that you're a terrible human being, and they did not do anything wrong to deserve your wrath, then that is definitely going to damage the image of the company. And I don't think I can tolerate that, but I haven't really gotten to that stage yet.
Okay. All right, that's helpful to know, because I think a lot of people don't really articulate what it is they bring to the table. And so some people sometimes think it's just skills. There's also behaviors and mindsets. So behaviors, characters, and mindsets. And you being able to properly articulate at each point in time as an employee what you are giving your
Hmm.
employer, people you work with, is one of the things that will save your life. Now, we talk about skills a bit. You are an employer of labor. What are the so you probably, especially for early career people, right? Because this series is geared towards people who are in uni, just finished uni, early career, or even actually people with 100 years of experience, but mostly early career people. What are the skills you are looking for and the mindset you're looking for from people that you want to get into your workforce?
Okay, so it's the major one would be growth, right? Like you
Mm.
basically want to improve in experience, and for some of them, the motivating factor would be money, right? It's like, I'm just going to make more money. That's why I'm doing all of this. I mean, like, it's totally fine. There's nothing wrong. And some, it's like, oh, they want to make things better, improve the quality of living. They want to give back to the society or whatnot, right? So different
Yeah.
motivators. But the most important thing there is how well do you strive? Because people can say, "Oh, I'm interested in this," but in truth, they really are not, right? When you give them all the resources that they need to thrive, and you notice that they are underutilized, it just basically tells you that this person thinks in their head that they want to achieve this, but they're not exactly putting in the works, right? So being able to identify that stuff at an early stage would sort of like determine if you stay or go,
Okay.
right? So it's like, for example, how frequently do you practice? When I assign you a task, like you don't just get it done, you also state all the possible issues or your
Yeah.
challenges along the way, right? So you keep me in the loop. You don't just go and just, do barest minimum and forget about it because that's not how you grow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the mindset is a growth mindset, and yeah, I would say that's the major one for me.
That's a major one. Growth mindset, very helpful. I think that's something that you also would want to see from people at every level. But when you are starting out, it's really, really important. That sense of hunger to do better, to get better at your skill is very essential. We can stay in this leadership, skills, development for 100 years. Well, now let's move to the money conversation. You
Mm-mm.
bootstrap. How, like, what's the experience? If tomorrow, as your friend that comes to me to say, "Oh, I want to start a business," and you're like, "Oh, what about funding?" I say, "Oh, no, it's not, there's no funding, no, it's my money." It's
I'll first start by shouting "Ewo," right? After I shout the "Ewo," I'll then give you a chair. I'll be like, all right, sit down here, sit down here. So let's start. If you know you don't have a customer, don't stress yourself. If you know you've not identified a paying customer, do not even stress yourself. For starters, because what you're about to enter is a long one. For Wixel specifically, I think that's the major headache, because it's the first one, obviously.
yeah,
You learn from your first set of mistakes, and hopefully you learn from the second and onwards. So it's like, I would say I started with three persons, right?
right. Right.
Yeah, three friends. And then over time, they just basically, you know, I won't say disinterested. They had other things to prioritize, right?
Yeah.
And at that time, I was very pissed. I was like, why am I the one putting in 100 and you guys are dropping 10 and 20 and yeah, so on. Yeah, so I'd say it's not easy at all. Bootstrapping is not easy at all. The only grace I had was most of the projects I took, I would often compensate everyone because it's like my for me and my staff at Wixo, it's simply contract based, like in the early days. Right?
Okay.
So it's like, see, we're going to get this gig, and this is how we split it out. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's like just focus and deliver your stuff. In the early days. Now, recently we started like paying salaries and all, and I would say not everyone clearly, because in truth is if you need somebody that is really skilled and you want to keep them, right? Which is the main reason why they tend to leave over time because they feel like, oh, I'm too skilled. This is not exactly adding much value to me. And besides, it feels like your thing because you're putting in 100 and I'm putting in just 20, right? So I'm just going to focus on myself. The solution to that was basically to give them incentives, basically give them equity. It's like saying, yes, we're all trying to build this stuff, right? But it's not a situation where when we succeed at the end of the day, that you will be left out, right? So it's like the new team I have, everyone has equity. It's like saying this is what we're getting. And
Yeah.
then it's like painting a picture because another thing is people are not stupid. They can basically tell again they can basically tell if you're serious, right,
Yeah.
by your actions, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's like saying the only major reason why I think these the new team members, right, are still with me is simply because they see results, right, from all that we've been doing in InSpace, not just Wixel as well, because obviously InSpace owns Wixel and Wixel owns InSpace. So
Okay.
every value that InSpace has is obviously they get to benefit from that as well. So they're like, oh, I see the vision. I see that you're putting all this money and all the work that we've been doing so far.
So, in terms of building a business, right? You've mentioned one thing that's important to sort of pinpoint very early. which is your customer base. What are the other things that people sort of need to get clear on very quickly if they want to start a business, a tech business? I mean, there's business and there's a tech business.
Yeah, for tech business. Tech business, I guess if you're building a software, right? We can
Yeah.
treat the software example first. If you're building a software, typically they would say MVPs have an MVP and this and that. Well, the reason is tricky as to why you can't exactly get a customer first, right? Even though you've done like market validation or whatever, is because they haven't tested it yet. So they don't know if they can actually pay for it. All right. So that's why you still have to go out and build this MVP nonetheless. Well, instead, it's advised that you start with an MVS, which is a minimum viable segment. So it's just saying that instead of building the entire like MVP, right, build a very niche part of the entire thing, right? It's like build solve the core problem, right?
Yeah.
And then take that problem to your customers, right? So I'm going to give an example of the app that I'm building at the moment. So it's called Enroll, and it is simply a way to sort of like manage customers. Like, how do I put it?
Okay.
If you're having a physical training, whatnot, it's not just for events or buying tickets. It's like it helps you manage the entire process. And if we look at that, the key part of that is the enrollment process, right? It's not having to sort of like upload the curriculum or provide all the information about the course. The key part of that is the enrollment process. And the core part of the enrollment process is getting them just enough information to make their payments, right? So it now boils down to the payment model specifically. In order for you to solve that problem, again, the MVP is a lot of things, but the MVS is just building your enrollment model and the payment model in that enrollment, and
Wow.
you're good to go. Meaning that the users can start working, or the business can start using that from the onset. Like you can launch tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And just basically proceed with that. So from that standpoint, it's like after you've done your market research and you see that oh, there's value here, you build the smallest bit and then you launch with that. And after that phase, you would definitely tell if there's true value there or not, because now it's in the hands of the users, right? It could be
Yeah.
the business, it could be the customers, and then they're like, I don't think this actually what solves the problem for me, right?
Yeah.
But if you
Mm-hmm.
could solve this problem for me, I would definitely be willing to what pay for this. So it shows you that there's value there, and then you can just put in more efforts into building the other models. So that's for me if you want to start a product, if you want to build a product, right? Now, if you want to be in a service line, typically it's finding customers. So it's like, oh, I provide UI design services. You ask yourself, where will I most likely find people that want UI design services? Or rather that need UI design services. And you have to go to those places because again, you can't just stay in your room and expect magic to happen, post on your WhatsApp status every year, because the truth is the people in your circle, about 90% of them don't exactly know what you're doing. And it's the harsh truth. 90% of them don't really know what you're doing. They just know that, oh, this person is a tech person and he talks about products left, right. I don't even know what product is. That's one thing I've come to realize. So it's like you go for meetups, you pitch yourself, you basically join design communities. If you're a UI designer, you join development community, you join maker spaces, and you basically build out some personal projects or projects as a collective. And that's sort of like how you get started. Again, it's one thing that most people I know, because that person that you're this close to convincing, right? Once they hear
Yeah.
that they're the first person that you're doing this work for, they wouldn't want to take the risk, because at that point it would seem like a risk. But it's easier to just basically say, "Oh, I've done work for 7 or 4 people." Right now, in this sense, you don't have to lie. You wouldn't be lying if you've worked with a collective. It could be for free, right, to solve a particular problem, right? You wouldn't be lying in that scenario, and that's why I encourage people to go out, contribute to projects, even if it's just a button you add, right? You are
Yeah.
acknowledged in that project, right? You don't have to
Yeah.
do crazy. So when you present them, oh, this is the awesome stuff I've done in the past, right? And I can basically do this for you. So it gives them a sense of, oh, this person has been doing this stuff for some time and they sort of like know what they're doing. So they might want to take that risk. Given that you don't have like a solid portfolio. By portfolio, you haven't worked in big companies and you're just, mainly a freelancer. So I'd say that's sort of how you tackle these issues and closing out on the first set of clients that you might have.
Okay. So you've talked about the solution, testing the viability of your solution essentially by building your MVS. So that's building the product. How do you build? Because when I think of the business around it, which is the less technical in sense of tech stuff, I'm also thinking of the systems and the processes that come together to create success around that product. So for you, what do you think it was like? And what do you, I mean, with building two businesses, one starting one recently 2 years ago and one 9 years ago, at what point do you then, because the product is the center. Most times what happens with tech businesses, they find the solution and the solution becomes their center, for lack of better terms. And they now start building the systems and the processes and the people from that
Mm-hmm.
center, around that center
Mm-hmm.
to set more purpose. So what are those sort of sustaining pillars like?
I'd say you definitely would have to do everything yourself, really, because it's a case of I have enough money to spend and I don't have enough money to spend for any of these things. So typically, one thing that we don't mention is most people don't know is if you're in the product side, you have to pay for marketing, and marketing is not cheap. Right? You can also choose
Right?
to go the guerrilla marketing route. It depends on how
What's
bold and
what's
courageous you
gorilla?
really are.
Wait. What's the gorilla marketing?
It's basically doing things out of the ordinary. So you could get someone to hold a placard in your road, something non-conventional, right?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So yes, it's more effective. It makes you trend, right? But again, you still have to get like a working product. Not
Yeah.
even if it works 20%, so long as it works, right? And you attract the people, investors, builders, right? Because people, it's interesting, but there are lots of people out there that just are looking for stuff to contribute to, right? Without necessarily money for a start, but they hope that that would, eventually become something. So the to answer your question, you have to do everything yourself and you have to always keep preaching about whatever it is that you're doing. But the most important thing there is if you have a customer or a few customers in mind, right? Then you should just basically focus on them. Because once you solve the problem for them, it's like going to John and saying, John, Sam, and Philip have tried my product and it solves this and that problem for them. Do you want to give it a try? Right? Versus, oh, there's this thing I'm building. Do you want to give it a try? Now, most builders don't exactly know how to sell. And
Yeah.
that's something you basically need to learn how to do. So yeah, you just don't have to give the impression that they will be the first people using your products, right? Because they tend to run away. And
Okay.
yes, you have to keep preaching and eventually things will take shape, right? You might either raise funding or if you know that there is something really good coming, you could convince your family and friends to invest in the product as well, which is actually how I started in space and sort of like how I've been running it for some time now.
Why did you decide to bootstrap? Because I mean, we're in the age of people investing in different products. So why? What made you decide to do that?
Well, I would say I'm scared. I'm scared, right? So I'm scared of a bunch of things, but one of them would be I don't like paperwork, right?
That is,
That's me being honest. So I don't like paperwork. I don't like paperwork because I like to be on the engineering side of things and
yeah.
also in the business side of things, right? So it's like, see, I don't want to have to go and draw up a pitch deck and explain all of these things to people. Right? I would be very happy if I have a team member, right? that would just simply focus on that and deliver results, right?
Yeah.
But personally, it's been my greatest weakness, right? And I know some aspire to Maguire people on the internet will tell you that you can do anything if you put your mind to it, right? And you should make your weaknesses your strength. That is, I wouldn't say that's not entirely true, right? But you also have to take into account your personality and your, or should I say, temperaments in a nutshell. So I'm an introvert. I have difficulty talking to people. Like I experience, like I can't just see anyone and talk to them, right? It's something I struggle with. As a Christian, it's sort of like super hard for me to lie. Once I'm lying, I have a poker face. You can tell that I'm lying because I will stammer, right? So you can feel the distress. But yeah, and there are people that do that seamlessly, right?
Yeah.
And in as much as I can put in efforts to, overcoming that weakness, the John Maxwell Leadership Podcast stated clearly in one episode that you should focus on your strengths and get
Oh, yes.
someone else
Handy.
to focus and get someone else, right, that your
Mm-hmm.
weakness is their strength. Yeah. So because the truth is you can't do everything yourself. It's anytime I hear the term self-made, I shake my head. I'm not self-made. Like there are lots of shoulders I stepped on just to get to, or that lifted hands that lifted me. Let me know you stepped on hands that lifted me to get me to this point that I'm at. Right. So if you could just simply focus on getting someone that is your opposite, right? To focus on the strengths, your weaknesses, right? Which is obviously their strengths. That would greatly like improve like the overall productivity. And that's why I would always encourage you to not build alone, right? If you have that option. Because building alone is harder. And especially when the frustration kicks in, right? It's
Yeah.
easier for two minds to share the frustration than just for one
Oh,
person.
yeah. That one person.
Can be quite overwhelming. So I'm happy for my team at the moment, right? And how the frustration and the pain is simply being shared across board. Before I tend to be the only one that handles that. So yeah.
That's very, thank you for saying that. Because I think a lot of times people underestimate the burden that comes with carrying some of these things and holding the vision as the forerunner or holding it as the person in charge can be quite heavy and it can be quite a lot. So hearing 'cause it's also something we want people to consider when you're young, even when you're old. Entrepreneurship is not an easy feat. And so being able to just be aware of the challenges that will come with it will be helpful. Do you sometimes think you're too young for your success or you're too young for all the things that you're probably doing?
I don't. I've never thought about it. It's not like I've never thought about it. It's like I think about it from this perspective. I believe I'm the ideal person to solve this problem, right? So it's not the case of age. That's how I think. That's the perspective. So it's like I'm looking around and no one is solving this problem, and I know I'm capable of solving this problem, or I'm opportune to solve this problem. So yeah, let's do that then, right? So no, I don't think I'm too young. Like I'm sure some people may have heard of Emmanuel and Joko, the laser pay um,
Hmm.
CEO or founder. Yeah. So when I met Emmanuel and Joko, he was basically in his early ages. He was, I think, 18 then, and you could see that he had lots of drive in his sense, right? And motivation to just create stuff and do stuff. And that was like the passion in a sense. So if you ever feel like you're too young, just stop thinking about that. Just think of what the possibilities, right?
Yeah.
How would imagine what would happen if I could achieve this? Imagine what would happen if there was a maker space in PH in Port Harcourt. PH is Port Harcourt, by the way. Imagine where creatives could come together and explore ideas. And, you know, it's like
Yeah.
that's simply the vision that I'm focused on. And it's not about like, I doubt myself from time to time. That's normal. But again,
Yeah.
it's like, what else would you rather do? I just focus on optimism.
It is easier to be optimistic. I think someone has said it is easier to be optimistic than to actually sit down and have maybe what some people will call a practical conversation with yourself about the decisions you're making. But why just optimism makes it easier? Okay. So I'm thinking of multiple things in my head. There's one around given the fact that you bootstrap and you there's a money conversation, ideally. There's also an experience conversation. I think we spoke about this earlier, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. I want you to probably reiterate what you said in different words. But I think fundamentally, we have touched a bit on the money, how it's important when you're deciding to start business by yourself. You need people who believe in you, sort of your early adopters, which people actually call family and friends, to say, oh,
Mhm.
can you buy into this vision, invest, and things like that. And I also think for some people, there are some financial institutions in countries, I think in banks, some of them who offer loans as well, and the microfinance banks as well. So these are different options you can explore if you say you want to start a business tomorrow. Although we have touched also on the process as well of you finding the solution, finding your first customers, and then also now building a process around that to sustain the success of the product.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the
So
experience.
can I add something before we get to the experience? So I said that I'm scared, right? And I'd say for the most part, the one thing that you should have in mind is raising funds is one, solving the problem is another, right?
Okay.
Like there are definitely lots of opportunities out there, but I am not the kind of person that wants to take a risk, right? If
Yeah.
like there is 100% chance of failure, if you get what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like saying I'm bootstrapping because I want to be sure that there are like there's a solution, there's value rather in the
Mm-hmm.
solution that I'm bringing before I step out to get funding, right? So which
Okay.
is exactly what is happening at InSpace at the moment. So we know that yeah, there's demand, right? Customers are
Yeah.
trooping in and out. So at this
Mm-hmm.
point, I could say yeah, confidently go and show people that see this is a problem, solve the problem with evidence
Yeah.
versus some people that just basically there's nothing wrong with raising grants, but the whole
Yeah.
point of grants is you're taking a risk. It might work, it might not work. You're
Yeah.
not held accountable for anything if it doesn't work out, right? But
Yeah.
if you do raise seed funds, we're not talking family and friends, you basically have to ensure that it goes right because you don't
Yeah.
want to be the founder that his product crashed because he didn't have a good enough business model. So yeah, I'm just leaving that out there.
Okay. All right. That's very helpful. Business model. Do we want to go into that? Yes, a bit on the business model. What do you think your business model is? What's when you say business model, what exactly should people be thinking about?
Yeah, so business model is in simpler terms how the business like the structure that would enable the business raise enough revenue, right?
Okay.
To either be sustainable or profitable. So sustainable is like it can run on its own, right? And then like take care of itself. And then profitable is it runs on its own and then there's still extra what funds at the end of so a bunch of things that you could do. You compete in the markets and depending on how should I say competitive that market is, you might need to bring your price down, right? Or you might need to say, everybody's doing this thing the same way, right? I think I'm just going to niche down. I think I'm just going to focus to be the very best in just one aspect,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that anybody that wants that would always come to me instead of my competition, right? And
Yeah.
then that gives you the leverage to possibly increase your price or offer like a premium sort of service. So business model is simply trying to figure out how to survive in a competitive market.
Okay. Do you know, I'm trying to remember. There was something that I think I was reading a long time ago, and it was around when you is either you decide, like you said, to product differentiation, cost reduction. Is a third one, and I can't remember it. And I think it's around sort of your strategies to ensure success in the market. This now Porter has five. There's 7 something Porter strategy, whatever that they use. But there's also these three, there are three and I've forgotten it. But it's very essential to think about when you're coming to the market, like you said. So for example, now we're not in 10 years ago when tech solutions were scarce. They are at every corner now. And so there's a conversation of when you are coming into the market and you're coming to solution, what should be your differentiation and what are the pillars to which you should build on? Because chances are the customer segment you are vying for, somebody else is already serving those people. So what you can you offer to take them away from there? Okay, so that's interesting. I think pulling out these conversations are really helpful because a lot of times the only business school people will ever experience is their lived experiences. A lot of people that run businesses would actually not go to business school. And even if you go to business school, the education isn't exhaustive. Like there's just a whole lot. And
And you need to learn
you,
on
like
the field.
you on your 2 legs. Which brings me to my next question around your experiences. So for people that probably don't know, and I think this is helpful, is one is you didn't have a business background. If I remember correctly from our conversation, correct me if I'm wrong. Two
Hmm.
is you actually made a decision to not do tertiary education. So there was
Mm.
no that formal education that probably people would think or probably people believe that it's important to ladder on. You didn't have that. Not that you didn't have any sort of education, which is what we're going to get into now. You come across as somebody who all that you have built has been largely on your experiences. So explain to me how you decide to not do tertiary education. And then now explain your experiences that you have used to build your business.
Okay, so like everyone, I'd say back in 20 2011 when I left secondary school, I was I was like, looking forward to the tertiary education. I was like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, or I'm going to be a computer wizard. That's what I used to call it then. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, then I'd already started doing some web design stuff.
Okay.
So I got into the uni. I got in, meaning I took jam, failed twice. So I'm not like the smartest person. And then the third time it became a lot easier. So and then I was like, I'm gonna fail the first 2 times. Anyways, moving on. I was like, yeah, so I failed jam twice, and then I eventually got into the uni, and I was completely disappointed in simpler terms because I was hoping that it would be interesting and more practical, hands-on, but that wasn't the case, right? I wanted
Mhm.
to do computer engineering, but I was given computer electronical electron electrics elect, electrical engineering rather, sorry, it's hard to
Mhm.
remember sometimes. So it's electrical engineering I was given as a course. So I was like, oh, this shouldn't be bad. At the end of the day, I should know how to build a circuit board or do something, just get a good sense of how electronics work or power. Well, that
Mhm.
was not the case because the first year, most of the courses that we were taught were not related to electrical electronics engineering.
Mhm.
It felt like I was smart enough to realize that these people were just basically the filling up the time, right? And
Yeah.
then I
Yeah.
did like a quick calculation in my head. I'm like, I'm supposed to spend 5 years, right? Since I already started doing web development. And
Mhm.
before then in church, I heard one time that the pastor said, my pastor then he said that if you want to be successful, you have to pick one thing and do it for at least 5 years.
Yeah,
right?
fair.
Now the 5 years is not that, oh, you would be successful at the from the fifth year. No, it's just basically it's mostly around between five to the 10th year, right?
Mhm.
But it takes 5 years to to build competence. So
Yeah.
whether you want to be a product designer, you want to be an engineer, you want to be a product manager, whatnot, right? Or data analyst, right? You have to sit your ass down and get things done. Like you have to learn, put in the time and effort. And also in this timeline, you would also build a connections, right? So
Yeah.
people around the same field, because that is simply what takes you or keeps you from the fifth year onwards, right? You'd not
Yes.
be like, oh, there was this Johnson I know. He has been doing this stuff for the longest time. I'm going to call him because this is his
Yeah.
field, right?
Yeah.
And then when
Mhm.
they reach out to you, you're the most competent person because you've obviously put your time into good use. That's
Mhm.
basically how opportunities come by, and you have to be prepared for them.
Right.
So I was like, if I'm spending 5 years in here, I don't think I would learn anything really. So because it's 1 year already, I stayed for 1 year and I failed. So I was like, I don't think I'll learn anything really because it feels like I'm wasting my time and there's like no drive or motivation to keep me going outside the fact that, oh, I would have a BSc certificate at the end of the year, at the end of
5 years.
the 5 years. So I was like, oh, I don't want to take that risk, right? Rather stick to what I know and just roll with it. So I'm not trying to say that school is a scam,
Yeah.
right? School definitely also brings you would definitely bring more opportunities your way, right? Like,
Yeah.
for example, it could be your course mates. You don't know where they would be in the coming years, right? Yeah, so school is definitely not a scam, but it's now left for you. For me personally, I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. I wasn't exactly learning. It felt like I was dying, really,
Yeah.
right? Outside the extremely crowded classrooms and annoying lecturers or arrogant lecturers. It was a mix of a lot. So I decided I wasn't going to just continue with that, and I just decided to focus on web design and programming, and yeah, that's how I decided to leave. That's why I decided to leave tertiary. Now, for the business and experience, you learn every day, right? You practically make lots of mistakes, like you're not negotiating right, or you're not selling right, or you're not. So these are skills you develop over time, right? With more interactions, you improve, right? You could, you know that it will cost you 10,000 naira to get something done, but for me, the major issue was negotiating, right? It wasn't the fact that it wasn't a skill issue. It was a pricing issue. Like in my early days, I know it's going to cost me 10,000 naira, and I would tell the client that it's going to cost me 10,000 naira. And then after I start, I realized that, oh, the feeding money is not in this money. Oh. The internet subscription fee is not in this money. Oh. TP2 is not also in this money. Oh. What the hell did I just do to myself? And yeah, although it was mainly because of passion, right, that kept me going, but it
Yeah.
was sort of like a struggle. So when it comes to pricing, you have to actually consider every single aspect, like every single aspect, down to the TP you pay to their office for every presentation, right? Because you're trying to run a business. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't compromise from time to time. There are times you could just say, oh, I like this project, it will really boost my portfolio. And you could choose to, subsidize the cost for that. But in a nutshell, just pricing was a big issue for me, right? So these are these things that you'd want to definitely work on. You could practice with your friends, practice with anyone that you trust, or just get someone else to do it for you to handle all the pricing and negotiations, and you should be fine from that standpoint. The others is mainly around workforce, right? In the early
Yeah.
days, it's like, how do you compensate people for their bit of work, right? So again, whenever it comes down to pricing, it's the pricing that will determine if they deliver your stuff faster or not, or if they
Yeah.
sleep on it. So that's another thing you also need to consider. am I accounting for them as well in the final cost? Because it's very competitive. Someone would say, I can design a website with WordPress for 10,000. And then you now begin to question your life. You're like, me that's charging 80,000. How will I survive? The answer is simple, right? It is this the details matter a lot, right? The details matter a lot. Now, you're not selling rights from that standpoint because the truth is there is definitely a gap in experience as to why people charge lesser fees, right? And until you sit down and figure it out, you would keep losing more opportunities to them. Because a perfect example would be if a client comes to me and they're like, I want to build a product. Yeah, building a product is not even the headache. I can build a product any day. There are security concerns with building a product, right? You don't want to build something that could easily get hacked. But the one mistake that we make, or I used to make then, is I don't paint the picture
For them.
to my clients. So they don't see like they don't that because in their head they're trying to weigh or sort of like figure out why mine is more expensive, and it looks like the both of us are saying the same thing, right? So you have to sit down and think, what can I do or how else do I explain this so it makes sense as to why I am more expensive than these others. So yeah, and that requires quite a lot of work. It's not something
Yeah,
you just sit. I guess with AI, you can sort of like, bamboozle them. But yeah, you have to be better at selling.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
this, I think that there are two things to do that. First of all need to fundamentally understand what it is you offer, and then now have the vocabulary and the charisma to explain it in such a beguiling way that people actually buy into the vision and the idea. I was listening to something. I was listening to somebody talk about how VC venture capital and how it's all a wash, and his main point was these people, I mean, not VC itself, but the whole process, but that's a different conversation. But his main point, which I'm trying to reference to, was it's all around selling. And he was talking about how the eloquence in which these people do it, you don't know when you're bringing out your money. And the position is in such a way that you're like, oh my God, I want to get into that sort of thing. And so being able to have the vocabulary around what it is that you actually offer, not just a website, because it's actually not just a website. It's actually one of the things
Yeah.
that makes it stand out. Okay. Last
Yeah.
question.
So like use big grammar if you use big confusing grammar sometimes and then they'll ask, oh, what does that mean? So the more eloquent you are, for those of us that don't know what eloquence is, it's just basically big grammar, right?
It's not
Communicate like a professional, right? Don't say this thing is going to do this thing. Try to eliminate this thing from your conversations with your clients. Sit down and look for the actual meaning of the terms, right? Look for the
yes,
terminologies because
yes.
that's how you also sell better.
You sound because it sounds so if you're using so for example in consulting, if you're using consult lingua, you sound they don't know what you're saying. They probably don't understand the full length of what you're saying. But because you are sounding like from that industry, you're using the vocabulary of that industry. Oh, definitely, you definitely must be experienced in industry, therefore I can trust you. And so
Yeah.
using like when doctors speak and their terminology, like, I don't what does that mean? But the idea that the fact that they're using all these things makes you feel like, okay, I'm in the right hand. That's sort of thing. Okay, last question. You spoke about community, and it's actually quite similar to what you are doing at InSpace. And you mentioned that it is very important for founders, for builders, for entrepreneurs, for visionaries. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, so I'd speak on my background. So I came from I wouldn't say middle class, I'd say poor family. So growing up, I didn't basically have access to a bunch of stuff growing up. And I would basically sit in cafe for long hours trying to figure out how to design a web page, self-taught with the help of Google, obviously. No zero mentorship, whatnot. So it took me longer, right, to gain confidence in, say, web development. So the reason why we need community is simple. I don't think in the educational system like the educational system in Nigeria is good enough, right? The standards are quite low, and this is simply it has a bunch of factors, right? But for tech specifically, if we compare that to, I'll tell you, let's speak on why I think the United States or the US or let's say every other first world country tends to push the boundaries in technology. It's simply
Yeah.
because it's instilled in them from, I wouldn't even say the primary level, I'd say from the tertiary level, right? They basically have access to resources, right? That can let them explore until they discover something. It's either they're coming with a new patent or they found a, a, an issue in a loophole in the existing system that can be improved on. So they're innovating. Why? Because they have these resources. They have lecturers that are willing to help them succeed. They have quite a lot. So it's like, what if we could just basically give our people, because our people are incredibly, like, humans are awesome, right? Especially like from what I've learned, people are smart. I'm not saying majority are smart. I'm just saying that even if 10% of them are smart, they are more than enough to basically boost or increase, like, say the improve the economy, right? Because
Mhm.
if we actually think about it, the researchers, the scientists, they're quite a number of, like, few, like quite a few. And if we don't sort of like share, we don't have
Yeah.
a culture of knowledge sharing in this part of the world, right? Because I guess the mindset is if I share it, I become irrelevant, right? And because I want to be Lord over all, right? I wouldn't do that. But one culture that I tend to admire, one tribe rather that I tend to admire is the Igbo tribe. From this standpoint, it's like the reason they got back to their feet after the Biafra. Sorry, I'm talking about the Biafra because if you think about it, really, is I'm sure most people know this. There's always an inter it's not inter apprenticeship system that they have,
Yes, there
right?
is.
There's an
One. Yes,
apprenticeship
it's
system that
one.
they have. Yeah, exactly. So it's like if we could just simply do or borrow that, say, culture, right? Where we're saying, see, I am an expert in this. I can show you the way,
Yeah.
right? But I also notice that our people are impatient. Same reason why we love instant gratification. It's like immediately I hammer, I need everybody to know that I've hammered, right? That is not a good mindset, to be honest. I'm not saying it shouldn't be you. You can do whatever you like, really. But in truth, if we want things to change, I've decided that I'm not doing that at all. So if you want things to change, you basically have to be more selfless in a sense. You have to be more selfless, yes, than selfish.
Okay.
So teach what you know, teach it to whoever finds it valuable, because clearly
Yeah.
there are lots of people that don't care about what you're doing, right? So you don't want to waste your energy. Right. So
Yeah.
you find those that are actually interested and you teach them, share everything that you know. Because at the end of the day, I'm thinking it's in the pipeline, right? When we're done with this phase, we're building a mentorship platform that just basically schedules an industry expert with a beginner or a novice or something, right? So they can meet, say, once every week, right? To just
Yeah.
simply guide them through. It's like a short 1 hour or 30 minutes meeting. Oh, where are you at now? Oh, did you do the stuff I asked you to do? Okay, cool. This is the next thing I want you to take up because this is what is relevant nowadays. But
Mm-hmm.
that's sometime in the future. So I believe community is super important because there's only so much that one person in their
Yeah.
wisdom can accomplish,
Yeah.
right? So we have to share more and we have to do more and we have to be more selfless.
Yeah. I think that's such a that's I don't know what adjectives you use to describe that response, but it's definitely vital because we can't do it alone. Lack of better terms. Like, you also need to draw on the wisdom of other people, both horizontally and vertically. I think last year for International Women's Day at GirlLEAD, we focused on building horizontal relationships as form of mentorship for you. Because you have friends, I have friends who they may not, I don't have any popular friends, but I have friends who are smart enough to know this person has wisdom in this particular field. And so I would always tap into it. And so if I'm going through something or I'm dealing with something or I want to approach a particular topic, I pick up the phone, you are the person I'm calling. And when we're speaking, in as much as we're friends, I am smart enough to know you are on your pulpit, for lack of better terms, and I'm a student, so I'm taking notes. And so having that, first of all, with friends, and then also having that vertically, you people sometimes wait for the mentor conversation to happen before they understand that my proximity to this person automatically means that I can learn from this person. I work with a lot of people, and one of the things that I'm fortunate enough to work with is experienced people. Somebody I'm currently working on a project with, she probably has God knows how many years of experience. We're never having that mentorship conversation. Never. But I'm also not dumb enough to think that because we haven't had that conversation, I'm not learning from this person. So
Mm-hmm.
every opportunity and every interaction, I'm pulling sort of this is how this is done. This is how this is done. This is how this works. This is how these things. And sometimes they are gracious enough to sort of say, this is my thinking behind this decision. This is also bring me to decision making to say, well, what do you think about this? That sort of thing. But having that sort of proximity and knowing how to use it well is also very important. And I think also being a community as well. That's something a lot of people don't think about. You want to be part of community. Are you also creating community for that people? Because there's a sense of where you just want to take and take and take, and you're not ready to give. It probably stems from the fact that people think they don't have anything to give. I think that's wrong. I don't have a perfect life. I think most of the people who are speaking to as part of this series are all young. They don't have a perfect life. They don't have it figured out. I don't think you have it all figured out, or from the little you have, can you think of a way to start giving? Not maybe on a platform or a pulpit, but in your community, when you go to in space and somebody is saying like, "Oh, I have this problem," are you ready to help them figure it out, or at least point them in the direction of people or resources that can help them figure it out? Because that's literally how we rise. There's no magic elsewhere. There's no cheat code elsewhere. It's by receiving and also by giving. Actively giving is one of the ways that you sort of build the communities that will help us grow. So
Yeah.
that's yeah, that
There's also a good side of being sharing your knowledge, right?
yeah.
That I learned firsthand.
Mm,
It's every time I shared stuff, I'm challenged with something that I've never thought of before.
yeah.
And it just basically opens up my mind and then I just simply grow, right? So
Mhm,
when I was teaching, right, I grew
mhm.
like way more, like 2x, right, faster than when
Yeah.
I was just basically alone and working on my projects all by myself. Because the interesting thing is students tend to ask questions that you don't have answers to.
Okay.
For
How do
example,
you
they
do
might, how do you do? How do
how how do you deal with that?
Well, the typical Nigerian sense, before I speak about it, the typical Nigerian teacher would be like, it'll be like, you don't know what you're saying, or they'll come up with something, right? But for me, it's like, oh, interesting. I never thought about that before. I've never done it. And then, depending on how much time I have, I would just basically try to mess around and see if I could figure it out. But the truth is, you don't, as like you teach, you learn while
Yeah.
teaching, right? And the truth is, you won't have the answers to all the questions, right? And
Yeah.
it's also shocking how just being a part of a community and you feel like, oh, if I join this community, there's not much knowledge that I have to share. You'd be surprised that there's somebody that doesn't even know half of what you know, right?
Yeah.
And that's like an opportunity to, raise someone up.
We do rise by lifting others. I think somebody said that
Yeah,
once.
yeah,
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Joseph. I think we can definitely go on and on and on and on. But let's draw this to a close here. And maybe if probably we say please enough, you probably come back in the future for another conversation. But thank
yeah,
you so
sure.
thank you so
Absolute pleasure.
yeah for the time and everything. I hope listeners enjoy this conversation, pick a lot out of it. And please feel free to drop sort of comments to say, oh, this is what I liked, this is what I didn't like, this is what I would like to hear more of, etc. and stuff like that. And we'll definitely do our best to serve you. All right then. Bye everyone.
All right.